Can anybody recommend investment locations for standard buy-to-lets under 100k?
But before we get into that, if you're new to this channel, make sure you stroke that like and subscribe button. Really helps out the algorithms, and you'll get notified with more content like this and other videos all around property investing mindset.
So I'm Harvey, I'm a remote property investor, and what I do is I live in the south and I invest in the northeast, and one of the main reasons I invest in the northeast is because I search for properties under 100k. And this is such a viable strategy today, which it probably wasn't in the past, and you get loads of people talk about this hour rule. I call it the hour myth now because everybody says you should invest within an hour of where you live. So everybody says you should invest. A lot of people say you should invest within an hour of where you live. Not everybody, because obviously I don't. But with today's tech, it's more than accessible to invest anywhere in the UK. The closer the better, by the way. But there's some fundamentals behind picking an area. So there is absolutely tons of areas where you can buy to let standard vanilla buy to let properties under 100k. So what I'm going to do in this video is not recommend you an area. I'm going to give you the fundamentals behind how to pick the area, because there's certain fundamentals which slightly differ for all of us. So and basically I'm going to give you a series of questions that you need to ask yourself, and depending on the answers of those questions will help you identify your location. So the power of your questions is the power of your results in your life. And that's the questions you ask yourself and the questions you ask others. Anybody stick in the comments, you've got any good recommendations for locations. But for me, all the major cities work. So if you go across the UK, all the major cities that have got over 50,000 properties of property stock. So you want large stocked cities. They all work, but they've all got different pros and cons to them. But every single city's got micro and macro economics working within it. So the macroeconomics would be, on average, the city might be really affluent and got strong capital growth, or on average, poor capital growth and poor employment. But there'll be micro economics within there. There will always be little pockets within every city where you're going to get a good element, a medium element, and a bad element. So you're going to have the higher end properties all the way through to the lower end and the ones in the middle. And every city's got that. Even the lower demographic cities that haven't grown so much, like your sort of Stokes, the Northeasts, the Hulls, and these sort of areas, these have all got your more affluent pockets within them. So when they get measured as a city, they get usually measured as a whole. So but as I said, you can find micro pockets within all of these areas. Every area's got them, even London. London's got higher end and lower end areas, but the demographic and the proportion distribution of the higher and lower is different in different areas. Some areas have got a larger proportion of lower demographics and some have got a lower one. In London, you still got lower areas, but the biggest difference in London is you're going to pay a premium for them lower areas, but there's still poor areas where there's like drugs and prostitution. But as I said, you're just going to pay a bigger premium for that in London. So let's go through this little quick exercise and identify this location for you. As I said, first of all, you want to make sure they're just major cities, and then you want to ask yourself why am I getting into this? What is the reason I'm getting into it? But this is a series of questions I encourage you to ask yourself. Is number one, distance. How far away is it from you? As I said, if you live in a city already that you can buy properties under 100k, stay in that location. I believe majority of people should build a good foundation of single let properties, because single let properties is the foundation of a good portfolio, because HMO's got higher turnovers, service accommodation's a bit more vulnerable to COVIDs and things like this. Commercial conversions a lot more vulnerable when you're trying to develop it out, because it just takes a lot more skill, money, planning, and resources to do that. So I feel everybody should build up a nice foundation of single let properties that gives you a good, solid, most passive form of income that comes from single lets as well. Although there's probably no true 100% passive income, but the most passive you'll get is single lets. And so if you get that nice residual base of single let properties at the bottom, giving you that income, that supports you to go up to some of the bigger strategies a bit more complicated. There is exceptions to the rule. I'm not going to go too much into this now. Some people can jump up that ladder a little bit, but in general, I feel everybody should start with single lets. And I feel single lets don't really work much above 100k, maybe up to 150k, but ideally you want to buy single lets under 150k. So if you do not live in an area where it's under 150k, then go and search an area that does work. Or you might live in a village like me. I was born in Stratford, Plaster Hospital, but from the age of 6, I grew up in a little village called Aveley, just out on the outskirts of London. First little place called Essex, on the inside of the M25 still. But as a result, I knew I didn't have any education in 2009 when I first started investing, but I knew it wasn't an investment location, because it's just a little village. There wasn't enough stock there, the price was too high, there wasn't really a rent demand, there was no employers, no transport links. So I bought my first buy-to-let in Southend-on-Sea within an hour, which is, by the way, a good investment location, especially back then it was, but I didn't know it no better than Aveley. So the home advantage of knowing that location was zero for me, because I didn't know Southend. And what I've done is I just went there, found the cheapest property I could find, asked the estate agent, they said it's great, and what I end up doing is buying in the middle of a red light district. So the advantage of investing local for me, investing within an hour for me, if you can find the properties in your price range, great. But if you can't find them in your price range and it don't work, it don't matter if you're an hour away or 4 hours away. Of course, there's a little bit of an extra drive, but the trade-off for the extra drive could be worth it. If you're in London or in and around where I live at the moment, no matter which way you drive within an hour, you're looking at 80, 100 grand deposits. So if you've not got 80, 100 grand deposits, this is a game stopper for you. So that's one of the next questions I'm going to say. What sort of money have you got? You know, so it's all well and good saying, I want to invest here because capital growth's good. Or I want to invest here because it's a sexy area. Or I'm going to invest remotely. I'm going to go to Manchester because everybody talks about Manchester. But Manchester, you're looking more like 50k deposits now. So if you've only got 20k, Manchester's not going to work for you. So whereabouts can you afford? So look at the closest place to you. So going back to the first question, so look at location, the distance. Where is the closest place to you which has the fundamentals behind like being a city that you can afford? Then you want to ask yourself, do I know anybody in any areas? So for me, I'm in Stockton-on-Tees. It's 4 hours away. I wouldn't encourage people to do a 4-hour journey because it's a slap. But the fact that I met somebody from the area that I know really well, he moved down to where I lived. We got really, really friendly. He's got over 70 properties in the area, so he introduced me to the area. And for sure, there's more areas in Stockton-on-Tees and Teesside, like my Southend experience with the hookers and heroin addicts. There's more of those areas up there, but again, as I said, you've got to look at the macro and microeconomics. It's about knowing the micro areas that are not like that, and he guided me into them really quickly, so it avoided me making the mistakes that I made in Southend within an hour away from me.
Just another quick reminder, if you're enjoying this, please give this a like, smash the subscribe button. It really helps the algorithms with this, push it out there and give me an understanding knowing that you are liking this and I'll make more content like this.
So that is critical. If you know somebody in that area, it's fantastic. If you don't, no panic. Come into groups like this, put your hand up and say, look, I'm investing in Stoke, I'm investing in Darlington, Doncaster, wherever you pick, Sheffield. I see someone say Sheffield. Wherever you pick, go into groups consistently saying I'm investing in this area and I want to connect with people. You just look at the Cove property guys. A lot of you in here probably come across them. They're prolific with their content. They met like that way. Jez is from London. Dan's from Newcastle. Jez went up to Newcastle, said I want to connect with somebody. They met. They've made a fantastic business together. So it's much more like when I met that guy from Stockton-on-Tees. It was a really random meeting back then because he moved down and it's random. The internet in 2009 wasn't quite the same. The All About Property group was founded in 2011, not 2009, but either way, like Facebook and groups and things like that wasn't quite what they are today. But today it's so powerful. Your network is your net worth, and you can network with people online quicker than you can do any other way, whether you're going to do this locally or remotely. So if you know somebody fantastic, that helps out. But if you don't panic. You can get to know people really quickly online. The next question you want to ask yourself is, do you want capital appreciation or forced appreciation? Because you rarely get the both of them at the same time. So forced appreciation is obviously adding the value to it. So when you buy a property, you force that value up. Capital appreciation is when the capital price goes up because the markets are moving upwards. So the whole of the UK has been in a strong capital appreciation situation. Even the North East, Wales, places that got lagged behind after the last recession have been growing, apart from London, central London at the moment. But as a result, it's hard to find deals. And the reason is, most of your deals come from motivated sellers. The reason you'll get forced appreciation is because you'll find somebody motivated to sell their property and they'll sell it to you for a discount because they're motivated for a certain reason, usually because they need speed of action. So when you're in a normal market, it usually takes about 8 weeks to 12 weeks to get an offer accepted on your property. Then it usually takes another around 8 weeks to go through the conveyancing system. So when you're in a hot market, it takes a week to get an offer accepted on your property, and especially if you advertised it 5k lower than the market, or just advertise it at the market value because things are going above market value. Who's going to sell their property to you at a significant discount if they could sell it within a week? They sell it to you at a significant discount because when you're in areas, I love the Northeast, by the way. I prefer the Northeast when we're not having this capital growth, if I'm being totally honest, because there was much more motivated sellers. Because if it takes an average 12 weeks, like for them to sell, and sometimes it could spread out, and they need an instant sell, that is a fair exchange for me coming in, giving them a lower price to be able to act quickly, especially be able to act quicker with legals and not offering them the certainty of it not falling out of bed. So if you're going to get high capital growth, you generally get lower motivated sellers. Lower motivated sellers, you are not going to get so many BRR deals. BRR is the way forward for me. I like a blend of both, and if you can get a little bit of a mixture of both, fantastic, but you usually have a bit of a trade-off for each of those. So you ask yourself, what's that like? What do I want? And what is that like in the areas? A general indicator, and it's only a general, as I said, this is a macro indicator. The higher the capital growth, the lower the amount of deals you're going to be able to get, and vice versa. So for me, all day long, I like the false appreciation. I get asked this question all the time because I invest remotely. They say, what about the capital growth? And I say, what about it? Manchester, Liverpool have been the top capital growth locations for the last about 5-6 years now. And I believe the North is going to outperform the South going forward. But let's just say I bought locally and I needed 100k for a deposit. And let's say I bought a 300k property, or I need 100k for deposit, stamp duty, legals, blah, 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 just giving it a little light tight over. The likelihood of me refurbishing that and buying it at a significant amount discount to be able to recycle money is low. So I'd have 100k in a property that I probably could rent for £1,200 a month, and that 100k will be just stuck in that property. So then I could take that same 100k, go up into the Northeast, and I could, and let's say that property gained 10% growth over the next 3 years. So I'd have a 90k growth capital appreciation of my product, which is fantastic, by the way. Who would stick their nose up to a 90k appreciation in growth? I've got property in the South and experienced that sort of growth, so it's fantastic. But now let's take another view on this. If you want to be an investor or not, depends on what you're doing, but let's take a view. I'll take the same 100k that I've waited 3 years to get 90k's worth of capital appreciation on, and I'll take that and I'll buy properties in the Northeast. I potentially could buy 4 or 5 properties. Out of 4 or 5 properties, I could potentially add 20 to 25k's worth of capital false appreciation by doing the work. So instead of having, so I put a 15k deposit down, 10k work. This is just rough figures, 10k work and my legals, everything. So I'm now I could do that in a normal market. So at the moment, I can't do that in a 6-month period. Kind of probably could if I really pushed it, but it's hard at doing a 6-month period at the moment for me because of the market side, and there's less motivated sellers. And going back to that same point I was saying, but in a normal market, I could easily do that in 6 months. Maybe sooner, but in 6 months I could do that. So in 6 months, I've forced the appreciation up of these assets up to added a good 100k. So in 6 months, I've gained the same 100k equity by forcing it, as opposed to just waiting for it to grow and hoping for it to grow. My fingers crossed, because you don't never know. But also in the side product of that, I've got 4 to 5 assets that's giving me 2 to 2.5k a month, as opposed to my £1,200 a month. Kind of like a bit of a mini HMO without having the HMO hassle. So you'd put the same sort of capital into it. So this is another reason why I prefer false appreciation. But the question is, what do you prefer, false appreciation or capital appreciation? Then you want to ask yourself, what are the returns? What is the return on my capital employed? As I said, if you put 100k into a deal that you're earning £1,200 a month for, and the net return on that is, I don't know, maybe as little, like your net return on that is maybe as little as 6% return on your capital, because the return on capital is your net return. So after all costs, after mortgages, after maintenance voids, the money you got left in your bank at the end of the year, how much is that returning on the 100k you got left in the deal? Be very low in the property in the South, where in the North, your return on capital employed are usually like sort of 15 to 20% without even refinancing. If you refinance it and pull some money out and only leave like 5, 10, maybe 15k in the deal, then returns go up to like 30, 40, 50, 100, infinity, because because you can, on the odd deal, very odd deals, get all your money back out. So look, what sort of return on capital employed do you want? How hard is your money working? The last question you want to be asking yourself about an area is, what's the rent demand? As I said, there's a macro and a microeconomic thing going on in areas with rent demand. So you will have micro pockets in every single area has got a really strong rent demand. But what you've got to do is try and align the rent demand in with your yield. So sometimes the rent demand gets really high, but your yield gets really squashed. But so try and get that little sweet spot. Every area's got that spot in there. What for me, I learned this years ago on multiple streams of property income. Is think of it like New York. This is the Bronx, and this is Manhattan. You don't want to be up here in Manhattan in the really high end stuff. You don't want to be here in the Bronx. You want to be just above that. This is where the long-term tenants are. So even if you go to here, and you might even still get attractive yields, when you look at the long yield you get, like the long-term yield you get from being here, because you've not got so much turnover, especially in single let properties, because you've got not so much turnover, you end up getting a better yield over a longer period of time than you do on these other ones, because homeowner mindset is more in this middle place, and especially in the north and in areas where, so for example, I could buy a property for 60 or 70k, rent it for 550. I could buy a property for 130 to 150k and rent it for maybe 7. So the yield gets massively compressed, but still not a bad yield. But then what you have to then consider is, because properties are only 100 to 150k, they're only paying £700 rent, which is relatively low in comparison to their earnings. They can save up quite easy, 5 or 10% for deposit, and usually a professional got a mindset of, I want to own my own home. So usually hang on to them for about 18 months to 2 years, where if you go a little bit lower, not at the bottom end, so you're dealing with social issue tenants, you go a little bit lower where you've got like benefits, like mums like need a bit of benefits or some universal credit top up, and mums that can't get council home, or low income families that can't get council home, and always families I aim at as well, because I give you longer term tenants than flats. Although I've got a few flats, but I don't aim at those. Mums and these sort of style tenants will stay there for like 5, 6, 7, 8. Not like the second property I bought up in Stockton-on-Tees. I bought it must be 9, maybe even coming up a decade ago, but about 9 years ago, and we've still got the same tenant in there. So yeah, that's the sort of profile I aim at. So hope you found that useful. Stick in the comments what your thoughts and views around it. Definitely reach out to me. If you are thinking about investing in a remote location, I support people with this all the time. Happy to jump on a call with you. No sales, no sort of upsell for training or anything like that. Happy to jump on free sort of strategy calls with people to work out their area, work out their plan of action into it. As I said, the barrier to entry is so much lower, so much more attractive for a lot of people. Not everybody. If you can invest locally, always use that as a first choice. But if you can't, then definitely think about investing remotely. But remember, if you don't evolve your ideas, you never live on your own terms. So evolve your ideas, live on your own terms. Have a fantastic day.